Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bilateral View. Arup K. Chatterjee on this side, and with me is Dr. Rodora Magan. Dr. Magan, we are going to talk about Marcus Aurelius, or Aurelius. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but more than that, I think we are going to talk about how he relates to our time. So, Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor, and he was born in 121 AD, almost 2000 years ago, and he lived for 59 years. And I think it was in his 39th year that he started writing very seriously. But this writing of his meditations, had no intended audience. So he was not thinking about you and me. In fact, I recollect reading something in his meditations which says something to the effect that you need not even bother about posterity, because once you're gone, you're gone. Yeah. So as simple as that. But I mean, you have been doing a lot of reading in the meditations, and you consider that book to be one of the cornerstones of your philosophy, if I'm not wrong. Why should we read it, and why are so many people turning to Marcus Aurelius in the 21st century, Dr. Mack?
Professor Chatterjee, good evening. It's very nice to see you again. Yes, I would say, well, it's not the cornerstone of my belief system, but this is the cornerstone of many people's belief system in the 21st century. And, it's very ironic because from the get-go, you could assume that this is a very technical piece, but once you attack meditations itself, it appears that Marcus is telling you one thing: sit back, relax, and just think that there's no pressure at all. Okay? It's like hearing the voice coming from the emperor. Well, it is the kind of voice that you could very well tell, nuanced in various principles, but no, here's the guy who's just very honest with his feelings and thoughts. People like him, by the way. I thought that people from all walks of life are happy to have this book from Marcus Aurelius, because they're seeing so many ideas about how to live a life, how to be good, how to be disciplining, children, how to be taking time when you have a problem, for instance. And when you feel like you're drowning, what do you do exactly? These are some of the things that you can read in the meditations. And by the way, these are so universal. These are so common.
Mhm.
Anyone can relate to this. No pressure at all.
Yeah, very interesting, because I don't know if you noticed the way you explained that preface to Aurelius. You assumed that he's talking to us, whereas and I think our viewers know that he's certainly not talking to us. There is, however, this tendency in classical religions or classical philosophy, rather, and it happens both in the Greco-Roman geography as well as the Indic geography, Sino-Indic, I should add, Chinese as well, that what you say to yourself is definitely taken as speaking to the universal soul, because that idea definitely gets slaughtered after the European Enlightenment, 16th and 17th century. So I wonder if that is how you meant Marcus Aurelius talking to us. But I think more than that, I would like to understand from you, what is Stoicism? Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic philosopher. Now, he had his predecessors and he had his successors in that field. So, what do you consider Stoicism? Does it ever appeal to you as a way of life? Does life require you to be a Stoic ever in your case? And again, I'd like to ask you,
To be
why do you think so many people, I'm told more men than women, are turning to Marcus Aurelius? Does that ring any bells?
Well, truth be told, Marcus is the alpha male, and whoever
Mm,
wants to be like
okay.
him will always have to embody those principles, in the manuscript. And it's very clear that these characteristics are reflective of alpha males even in the 21st century, these are the people who know exactly what to say, not too verbose, very silent, very, let's just say, very sensitized to the idea of wisdom. I mean, what wisdom is to Aurelius means that you know exactly how to handle situations. These are CEOs, COOs. These are people who walk the talk. They basically know how to ensure the company is going in the next few years, to maintain relevance or to continue the legacy of engaging the huge market out there. Demographics would tell us very clearly that these men are taking high positions in society. Well, first and foremost, we have a male president. In contrast to Europe, though, we have female chancellors. But that both positions, the
That's
male
in the
position and the
in
female,
the in the Philippines. You're talking about the
well,
Philippines.
in the Philippines, we have the male. We only had two women presidents in the history. And the first one was in 1987 onwards, and the second one was roughly a few years back. But in every country, there will always be a question of who they want to rule them, and usually the one who wins is the male. But this convo is never about whether or not the females can't rule. It's just that many of these male rulers are aware that there is a huge responsibility on their shoulders, and they have to act upon this job in a very sensical way so that we don't see casualties being dragged into it. Just like, for instance, how Barack Obama handles the Afghanistan situation, or how Trump, for example, handles the illegal migrant situation, or how your prime minister in India there is handling very diverse situations. And for instance, Modi, how he uses the radio to channel these very important ideologies to the people. That's one example of how a man can man the wheel and can do the job well. Well, except for Assad, who is recently abandoned by the people in Syria. But even that action of the dictator, um, there's still a glimpse of what masculinity is about. Like, he acknowledged that the people no longer respected him and that he had to flee the country. I'm not saying he is in any way near Marcus. I'm just saying that if we are looking at what good leadership is about, it's about knowing when to stop, knowing when to continue, knowing when to realize your mistakes, which I hope Assad, for instance, has realized by now. So going back to these males in the 21st century who are very much enamored by the ideas of Marcus, we can assume that they are finding their own niche in these pages and that they find comfort in these pages. We can argue that the kind of comfort given to them helps them navigate their being a father, their being a leader in the family, their being a friend. These are the roles that Marcus too acted upon in his life when he was still alive. So he, like you said, he too experienced pain, the losses in the family, the deaths of his children. And being able to bounce back is very laudable. And I thought that many men would want to emulate this kind of perspective so that they could not be laughed at by their wives. Because it's very important that masculinity in the 21st century should be carried on, should be upheld. Well, I'm a female, and I believe that, biblically, that's even one of the most important reasons why, the family can stand, because there's this respect afforded to or accorded to the father. And many 21st century leaderships are based on that. I'm not saying that women are being disenfranchised. No, it's out of the picture. I'm just saying that there is a great acknowledgement about the roles of men and how they can transform societies if they're thinking in the right perspective, if they're going for the most important decisions. Because really, these decisions should come from men first and foremost. And that's what they're getting from the meditations, primarily.
I don't exactly yet see the correlation between meditations, having read parts of that, and the decisions that you're talking about. There might be a correlation, but I think you will have to tease it out for us. But more than that, I'm now interested to hear from you some of the exact things that Marcus Aurelius writes about in the meditation. So, what are these? Are these very everyday problems that he's facing, or are these problems of a very general, a very universal nature? Now, he's an emperor, so he's facing grandiose challenges, which may or may not resemble, the day-to-day domestic and social challenges that we confront. So, what are the things that we can take out from his book? You would
Professor
say.
Chatterjee, we have to know that yes, he is an emperor, but he is also a human
Mhm,
being, and also he's a father. And
mhm,
if there's one thing that is very relevant to the 21st century, it is how to discipline your kids. Because
mhm,
there's that very important note in the meditations that you need to be disciplining your kids because they're
mhm,
going to be the hope of the future generation. And coming from Marcus, he says if they commit mistake, they should be told about their mistakes in a gentle way,
mhm.
in a way that would make them realize, okay, it's my fault, Dad. All right, Dad, I'm not going to be doing this again, something like that. I could imagine Marcus being a very gentle father, somebody who never raises an arm if not necessary, somebody who calls the kid, well, in this case we can only think of Commodus, right? Because the rest died, and we only have Commodus being the surviving child of Marcus. I could imagine that at some point Marcus said, Commodus, come here. Let me tell you one thing. You were wrong in doing this, and I thought that it's best for you to be very careful next time. I'm imagining the kind of
But
voice.
was Commodus really as great an emperor as his father? Uh,
Well, everyone knows, it cannot be denied that Commodus never reflected the dad's image. It's a far cry from,
so
from
you're,
the image of
you're
Marcus.
you're essentially saying that Marcus Aurelius's principles did not work in his own life. Is that your?
Professor Chatterjee, that's what reality says. The father could be so good, but the son could not be any similar to him. I mean, that's also one of the things he said. Destiny is destiny. So if you're not destined to be like him, well, we have to accept that reality.
I,
Um,
I suppose there are many glaring questions. Let's imagine he was maybe not entirely right on this score, but there's this whole world of distractions, social media, the dark web, and since we are academics, there's also spark notes and whatnot, which are also distractions. So people do not read Shakespeare or John Keats or Wordsworth or Aurelius, and they maybe go on all these guidebooks, digital guidebooks, YouTube. So the original does not have a value anymore. People are not always interested in living out their lives and learning a few lessons from their experiences, but relying on fake experts. So there are these distractions. Then there is a whole lot of ideological confusion for people born in the 21st century. Could you tell us something that Marcus Aurelius's meditations might speak about to these people? So maybe teenage men, young adults. What would they take out of Aurelius?
Aurelius very specifically said that you have to live for the present.
Hmm.
Well, I would understand this as a guide, as a playbook, a major playbook for people who don't think about how important the present is. Because there are some of them who are haunted by these ghosts, like what we had in the hauntology episode. They were still stuck in the idea that, they can never escape these ghosts, the nostalgic ones. Hence, their present life is not much oriented to success, accomplishment. Well, I'm not saying that this is the main goal of life. I'm just saying that, you know, on a daily basis, we have to be productive. I mean, a very
Mm-hmm.
simple act of reading a book, for instance, that spells out productivity, right? A very simple way of studying your lesson if you're a student, and not always browsing, and not always Facebooking or Instagramming, is another example of how to become a good student. Or if you're a university professor, a very simple act of, say, doing an extension job in your community, apart from your usual routine at the university, is also another way of valuing your present. Like it or not, there are a lot, like I said to you, who are so scared about their past, about these ghosts. And I thought that Marcus was very much confident in saying that, you know, you should not be enslaved by these things. Get up and always fight these specters. Professor Chatterjee,
Mm-hmm.
you and I know exactly that even Marcus, he is an emperor, right? But he wakes up
Mm-hmm.
so early in the morning. It's a routine. And we are also hearing that these
And
people like,
does he also make his own bed like Jordan Peterson advises young men to?
right? I could also include in the conversation Bill Gates, Elon, Oprah,
Mm-hmm.
who else? Because these people too wake up so early,
Okay.
as early as 4 or 5, and these lazy people who are not even CEOs. I'm talking about the Gen Zs now, are so
Mm-hmm.
dependent on their parents. Wake up at 9, 10, 11. What is there to do at 11 a.m.? Come on. Well, in my country, for instance, millennials like me, we're not like the Gen Zs who wake up too late in the morning. We are always taught to wake up at around 5 or 4 because we need to study lessons. We need to be doing household chores. But I thought
Mm-hmm.
that times have changed so drastically that these things are no longer taught. And I thought that, Marcus should be given the limelight in a school, in an elementary school. Sorry, in an elementary
To
institution.
to to on a serious note, listening to you sounds to me like Marcus Aurelius is not, or maybe he's good in writing, but maybe he's even better in practice. So
Hmm.
would you rather recommend people to read Marcus Aurelius not as a literary text, not as a philosophical text, as much as a guidebook of activities, as much as a book of instructions? Is that, do you think, the right pedagogy to read and teach Aurelius?
Yes, Professor Chatterjee, like a playbook. You see, I don't know if in India you have GMRC, but in my country, a few years back, we have it, Good Manners and Right Conduct. It's a very specific course taught to high school students. But I thought that now it's gone, so that I can say there are a lot of them now who are very disrespectful. And come to think of it, we are in the Philippines. We're a conservative country, supposedly, right? But we are now
Mhm.
hearing kids who talk like the Americans, who don't even value the terms, the endearments, the po and opo in our culture. In India, we have a lot
Mhm.
of words as well that would, signal courtesy. But in many parts of the globe, because of social media again, these things are forgotten. I thought that, no matter how tiny, we have to be careful with always bringing them to the 21st century, because the
Mhm.
details are the ones that make it very colorful. And I thought that people are disregarding the tiniest of things, but I thought that we have to get back to these things and give them the benefit of teaching our kids at present, making them relearn these things because they're so important. That's why Marcus, right now, we are hearing him like a father, like a friend who tells another friend, hey, you have to also wake up like me and make your bed too. And don't expect anyone to really do a very pompous morning ritual for you, because he never wanted that, by the way. We read in many books that after his meditations in the morning, he just simply goes out the tent and stretches his limbs, arms, legs, like doing a simple exercise. And overseeing everything, looking at the soldiers around him, and
Hmm.
just enjoying the environment, seeing the
Hmm.
mist around them, the greens around them. And I
So
thought that
he's
it
you're describing him as an observer, as a detached,
ah,
dispassionate observer of life.
exactly.
Is that the right description, do you think?
Yes, Professor Chatterjee. And I thought that it's a very primary characterization of people who are in the framework of Stoicism. They observe a lot. That's why I told you before, because they observe a lot, they don't really talk a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They only speak when it's necessary. They're so careful with words because they know that words are powerful. Hence, because these words are powerful, you cannot just waste any single word. That's why one phrase, or say one sentence with three words, is already very powerful if you know the right context for it. Unlike people who are not so careful with words, there are 1 million words, but there's a vacuum. There's no meaning.
Mm.
There's not much weight.
Great. Now, I am. I think that it's been a wonderful conversation, Dr. Magan. I have this last niggling in a doubt. I don't know if you have an answer to this, but there's this new phenomenon of correlating Stoicism with toxic masculinity, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to refer to this. One of the most dangerous philosophers in the West. I know you don't fancy him much, but this is Slavoj Žižek, and I heard recently. So he has got this sort of a battle going on with uh, um, Judith Butler, and Judith Butler, whose notions of gender as performativity are not
Mm-hmm.
very acceptable to Zizek. Anyway, long story short, so Zizek recently has been very vocal about how Stoicism, or this kind of going into a shell in case of certain people and enduring what reality is throwing at them, this has been claimed in the parts of the academia, maybe the Western academia, as an example of toxic masculinity. That's so Zizek has openly come out calling this very weird, and this actually is a sign of bravery, according to Zizek, rather than toxic masculinity. Now, would you like to address this very easy correlation that people are making, and I find this definitely in the academia, but also in certain other elite spectra of literary and political expression, between this correlation between Stoicism and toxic masculinity. Did you ever feel while reading Aurelius's Meditations that, oh, this is somebody who's a toxic masculine person? Is that how he appeals to you, or do you think no?
Professor
It's
Chatterjee, there's just one thing in my head. It is very absurd to think that meditations is conveying the idea of toxic masculinity. First and foremost, what do they exactly mean by toxicity? Because I thought that in the 21st century, well, because of wokeness, everything is toxic, right? And something that is, this is very funny because these people who are considering themselves
including
to be
including
woke,
wokeness, including wokeness. Is that also toxic?
that's why I would argue, and this might not sound very nice to these people. This kind of wokeness we're having in the 21st century is wokeness that that had gone wrong, because it should have been the right wokeness. But when they're considering themselves as woke, yet think that the meditations is conveying toxic masculinity, they have to reread it, because I thought that if you just flip through the pages, well, personally, what I felt was I was listening to my father, giving me, the proper things to do. Say when you are overwhelmed about something, when you commit a mistake, always, redirecting you to the force of life up there. Even Marcus is always referencing God being the one who should be revered, because, well, Marcus, we know him. He is a very avid what follower of whatever colors are giving him every morning. In other words, he is a naturalist. He loves the environment a lot. He loves these trees and everything. And yeah, that
Is
cannot be
he? Is he?
denied.
Would it be fair to call him a pantheist?
It's not fair to call him a pantheist because in many parts of the book, he refers to one direction, one God, one truth, and that cannot be denied. Although there's no clear, there's no explicit mention of Jesus Christ, but we can clearly see it in various pages that he goes for one truth, one path, one God. Ergo, he couldn't be a pantheist. And well, if I would further argue in relation to that, his admonition to, you know, to make sure her, or the admonition about parenting, about how to guide, kids and all that, and children, that would even
Mhm.
resonate what the Bible keeps in saying, that this is the way to go, and this is not
But the
toxic
Bible
masculinity.
hasn't even been written by at this stage. So don't you think it's a little unfair intellectually, if not on many other levels, to
Well,
compare his
Professor
thoughts to the
Chatterjee, don't forget that during this time, Marcus was hearing so many stories about these people who had been persecuted in various provinces of Rome. And
Bible?
yes, and so we couldn't really say that he never knew anything about this. Epictetus, of course, the teacher, would have been at some point able to give him these things that sort of swirled in Jerusalem, and in the entire Roman Empire. We are seeing these people creating ripples because of what they had been doing, sharing the gospel and everything. So going back to the toxic masculinity, this whole performance of Marcus being an emperor, being a person that he is, being a father, it cannot be toxic. In fact, it is the
Mhm.
complete opposite of toxicity. And I thought that for these people who think of this as toxic, that means to say they are misinterpreting the whole thing. Perhaps, Professor
Mhm.
Chatterjee, because again, they are in this so-called wokeness that they would want to also protect.
So would you say that calling calling Stoicism an example of toxic masculinity is like calling our discussion today to have been on Karl Marx or something, or maybe who knows,
Okay.
Joseph Stalin.
Well,
So all this evening we spent discussing Karl Marx and Joseph Stalin, didn't we, Dr. Magan?
Professor Chatterjee, I don't know, but at some point,
Mm,
this ghost you introduced to me a couple of months ago,
mhm, mhm.
keep on coming back. And,
Yep.
your discussion regarding hauntology last time is just so powerful that, even my students keep on talking about their own ghosts. They keep on talking about their experiences that need to be really understood thoroughly. And at some point, you have these ghosts that should never be allowed to come back. Even Marcus, in having these meditations, he is very aware that while in silence, while he holds the pen, and while he allows the paper and the pen to engage, he
Mhm.
had thoughts in the past. Perhaps we could imagine him recalling his father. By the way, he likes his father so much, his grandfather too, and he loves his wife as well. Of course, those kids who died, the friend who betrayed him, by the way, whom he still loved despite what that friend did to him. All of these
Mhm.
experiences were all part of his wonderful contemplation. And on that note, by the way, he encourages contemplation a lot.
Mhm.
So 21st century men and women, forget about the idea about toxicity, because either masculine or feminine, we all have to contemplate, right? And
Mhm.
it makes sense whether or not we are still in the right direction. Because frankly, Professor Chatterjee, a lot of paradigms in the present century are not quite sensible. Okay, well, not sensible in a sense that, say, for instance, you're saying these are toxic, as what people say, but they're not toxic. So they're not thinking properly about these things that they're reading.
I think we have run out of time, but Dr. Magan, this sounds to me, I think I'll hear the echoes of this conversation like something that should have gone on for a very long time. And I think that tells me we should come back to Marcus Aurelius in one of our foreseeable
For sure.
future episodes. Certainly, but thank you so much. That's I think that's a wonderful introduction, and the kind of passion with which you spoke about Marcus Aurelius should certainly inspire our listeners, our viewers, to turn more and more to that great Greco-Roman emperor and philosopher. Uh, and I would love to hear more of your thoughts on Marcus Aurelius at some future date. But for now, this is Arup K. Chatterjee signing off from Bilateral View with a very, very warm namaste. And Dr. Magan, over to you.
I'm Rodara Megan once again, and our dear viewers, please support us all the way through. We know you're watching us. Please do comment, please like and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, please share as well, because this convo we have had is just so amazing, so easy breezy. I hope you can discuss advice with us in the near future. And yeah, I'm signing off as well from the Philippines with a warm Maayong gabi natong tanan, daghan kaayong salamat.